Time is your most precious resource, and time management may be your most precious skill. How do you apply the Pareto principles or the 80-20 rule to time management? Let's dive in. By the end of this video, you should have a clear idea about what productivity means to you and how you can apply the Pareto principles to improving your productivity on some important things in your life. I'm going to do this in a tutorial style so I can take my time. I don't want to add any hooks to keep you watching until the end, etc. I'm just going to dive in. So what is Pareto principle? I mean, we all know about this Italian economist from the early part of the previous century, and he discovered that 80% of the landowners, 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the people. And you've seen this rule applied in many different contexts. It's a principle, not necessarily an exact figure. So 80% of the wealth is owned by 20% of the people, 80% of the outcomes happen from 20% of the actions, etc. Right? I mean, it's the same thing. It's approximation 80-20, and then let's see how it can apply to your context. So you've got 24 hours a day. Right? Let's split that into 3 parts. So the 8 hours of sleep, that kind of stays. Usually if you have a day job, we split 8 hours of work, and then you've got 8 hours of other things. So let's do this. So let's assume that this is your life. You've got 3 parts roughly. You've got your work for 8 hours, your sleep, and you've got the others, right? And then for you to measure productivity, it's a simple ratio of input versus output, right? In the earlier days, in the times of the Industrial Revolution, you went to work for 8 hours, you produced, let's say, 20 clips, right? Your productivity was easy to measure. Let me make my math simple, 24 clips. So each hour you produced 3 clips. So your productivity was 3 clips per hour, easy to measure. And it's also easy to measure if you are improving on your productivity or not. So if you kept producing only 24 clips for a year, then your productivity was kind of standard and nothing changed. But let's assume that you started producing 32 clips, then your productivity increased by 33%, right? This was a simple measure. That worked a long time ago, but in the times that we live in, this is not so easy to measure. So let's maybe take a different math here, right? So I'm going to focus on one aspect of our life. I'm not going to focus on sleep. You cannot compromise. And I'm going to focus on primarily this area of your work and this area of your work, which is, other stuff that you do. So let's say, I call this others because this is a lot of blocks of activity. We could be getting ready for work. It could be, Netflix time. It could be TV time. It could be travel time. You know how your time is spent, right? So let's focus on this part and let's focus on this part here. Right, let's do a simple math. Let's assume that you work 8 hours a day. So you do 8 hours a day, 20 days a week, 20 days a month, and roughly 50 weeks a year. Let's assume that you take 2 weeks off. So the simple math here says 160 times 50. I'm going to put a number, sorry, that's 1,000. So, oops. So that's roughly 20 days a month. Sorry, I'm just using my calculator there. 8 days, 8 hours per day, 20 days, and then you've got 12 months, right? So 12 months or 50 weeks, so that roughly is 1,920 hours that you work per year. And let's say your annual salary for that is, just to approximate, is 100,000, right? Again, I'm just approximating, so it's easier for you to follow the logic. So here your productivity is easy to measure. If you just go by simple mathematics, it is $100,000 divided by 1,920 hours, right? If you are a consultant, this is what you call as your billing rate. So you've got 100,000 hours by 1920, and that is roughly $52 per hour. So if you have to go to the industrial age equivalent, your productivity value is $52 per hour if you earn 100,000 a year working these many hours a month, right? So now let's go back to the previous picture of, right? We don't disturb sleep. So here your productivity is $52 per hour. And you get your annual rises, some things change, but essentially in a way, and there's also inflation, so in a way it's more or less a fixed number. So how you can improve productivity? It's basically by working less time or making more money, right? It's a simple ratio. This is the only two ways to do it. So either work less time, earn the same money, or work the same amount of time but earn more money each hour. So that's one way to improve your productivity. The other way to improve your productivity is by figuring out what stuff do you do here in your others bucket that doesn't lead to anything. I mean, for example, if you do anything around, let's say, workout, I would argue that's as critical as the rest of it. So, don't touch it. If you spend some time, walking with your family or something, I mean, anything that contributes to your emotional health or physical health, don't touch it. But let's look at the other times that you could potentially target. Maybe there's a Netflix time. I would still argue it's important to an extent. Maybe there's your social media time. And for some of the guys like me, there's the toilet time. Let's look at this bits of time and see what we can make out of this time. So if you don't have so much of an influence in increasing your productivity at the job by earning more or working less time for the same money, I mean, these are the only options you have left, right? I mean, you cannot sleep less. I mean, potentially you can, but it's a health risk. You don't want to compromise on the most important things in life, like your own personal health or your family or your well-being. So you cannot compromise. But there are some obvious targets that you could look at. All right, let's look at the 80-20 again. So let's figure out which of these activities actually take 80% of the time and give you 20% of the value. I looked at your social media time. We talked about your toilet time, some of us. We talked about our Netflix time. We talked about the other scrolling that we do, etc. So these are the 80% of the time spenders that give you 20% or even less, right? So let's look at what, if we want to improve our productivity with this, small percent, what can it be? Right, going back here, no compromise work, no compromise sleep, and here we found things that we could potentially cut out, right? So let's take the 20% of the time that you could potentially cut out, and let's look at what we can do with this time, right? So you can learn a new skill that results in dollars, or you can take a second job that also results in dollars, right? Let's look at some of these new things that you could potentially learn, and then that can result into something that is of value to you, right? And I pick 3 topics, and I pick these because I do it myself, so I know it works. I'm not going to teach you how to become a millionaire because I haven't done it myself, but these I have done. So let's look at some of these, right? So writing, what do I mean, and how do they, how does learning this, potentially add, income to your life? You could become a freelance writer, and most of us are experts at something, and there's many fields where the professional writers are expected, and there are many areas where people are needed to share their experience. So we have a lot of people with a lot of experience, but we have a very few people who can actually translate that experience into something that others can learn. So if you have a skill from your primary job and you can translate that into content that others can read or watch, that is valuable, and I will share other ways where you can monetize, where you can make money from it. So I would say freelance writing. You could do blogging. It's still going strong in 2024. Blogging can lead to a lot of different income categories. You could do affiliate marketing. You could do sponsored posts, and it can also eventually lead to you having your own SEO agency. And copywriting, which is another form of writing that traditionally intends to sell something from this writing. It's with Gen AI coming in, this is getting harder, but it's also the reason why you need to hop on now, because this is going to be a skill for the future, to be able to work with generative AI. And if you don't know how it works, in a way you also might impact your original job. If you do a lot of email writing, or if your primary role is summarizing presentations or creating presentations, you've got to understand how Gen AI works. And writing is a great way to get into this world. So you could do that. And I've made some money myself from doing some of these. Not a lot, but anything that adds $1 more to the same amount of time is making you productive. Right, you could do this. And I'm going to say content, in general, content creation, writing is one, but I want to focus a little more on video. So today I'm sharing basically what I know, and some of you might find value in it. And in the long term, this might be enough value for somebody to pay for something like this. Of course, it's got to be more detailed. So I could create a course. Both of these actually can help me build a brand, which I might be able to utilize for different things later. So the other thing that you could do, going back to the original circle, is finding this tiny bit of time to learn. And even if it's not a primarily monetizable skill, you could learn to improve your knowledge. It could actually be another skill for work. Right? And how can you do this? You could do this by taking courses. One of my favorite learning apps is book summaries. They help you take large books and help you digest that into a 15-minute summary, audio or text. And this way I get to learn a lot more than reading a full book, 200 pages. Book summaries help me navigate through multiple books faster in a year. So coming back to overall Pareto principle of time management, define your output. What is important to you? Is it money? For many people it is, and it should be. It's health, it's family, and your list is longer, right? You define what is important to you, and almost in every case your only input is time, and you might want to measure your output by one of this. It's either you make more money, or you improve your health, or you improve your family situation. So how are you improving your productivity with your Pareto principle? It's you measuring your input in time and you measuring your output in the value that you want, and then you're figuring out which ways can actually help you increase it. So taking an example, you invest 8 hours at work, flat, nothing happens with it. That's a dead end. You invest 8 hours in sleep, nothing happens, dead end, right? And they primarily go towards these two categories. And then you've got roughly 8 hours where you can find tiny things that you can do. So of this 8 hours, find the 20% that go either towards this or this or this. So for example, adding a new regime of, let's say, walking 15 minutes a day is one of those 20% things that you can do, but impacts your health. So it goes to your 80%. I have more videos that talk about these in detail. I've got another video that talks about some of the high income skills that you might want to learn in 2024. I have more videos coming talking about improving your productivity based on your own definitions. So subscribe to this channel and see you in another video.